Let's begin with the next session, which is a trialogue, a panel discussion on bridging the gap, how banks are collaborating with the local fintechs to redefine India's financial sector. And the trialogue here is being moderated or led by Mr. Sanjeev Mehta, Managing Director, Head of Transaction Banking Sales, India and South Asia for Standard Chartered Bank. And our speakers on this panel, Abhilash Edakadampil, CTO, Global PayEx, and Mr. Deepesh Baxi, Chief Financial Officer and Wholetime Director, Castrol. Over to you, sir. It's on. The mic should be on. You can say something in the mic. And
Hi,
yeah.
I'm audible. Good, guys. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Sorry, I believe we are running late by about 40 odd minutes. It's one of its kind of a session. I believe in the morning the organizers were having some issues in terms of how to listen, how to work, and that's technology, right? Imagine most of us would have not known that we could hold conferences with earphones and we could be talking and listening as well. So my name is Sanjeev Mehta. I head transaction banking business for the bank, which is Standard Chartered for India, South Asia. I have been with the bank for over 15 years, in banking experience over 25 years. Worked all across banking, including Yes Bank, American Express, and with the HSBC, Citi, and Bank of America as DSA guy. Having sold liabilities, retail liabilities, having sold business banking, wealth management, private banking, I've moved on to the corporate banking side, and then the journey kind of has continued. Only thing I can say is that when I started my career, it actually the banking industry has transformed, because we used to sell banking as basically a ATM as a proposition, and ATM, a note out of a ATM machine used to be like a new note out of an ATM machine, and then you open a bank account. And clients used to look at, wow, what a feature. From there to now, we're talking about, the entire aspect of digitization, automation, alongside the entire way how corporates and the industry has moved. Is ATMs or cash is not even required. It's not even there. We just completed digital. So that's an era. That's a change that we've seen in 25 years having evolved. I would like to, in the interest of time, do some quick introductions for our staff panel here. On my right, immediate right, is Mr. Deepesh Baxi. Mr. Baxi is a finance professional with 25 years plus years of industry experience, of which he's spent 18 years in BP PLC and is currently CFO and whole-time director of Castrol India Limited. He and his team work closely with Castrol India business to develop and deliver long-term strategy and maintain a robust accounting, control, and compliance environment. Deepesh is also responsible for strengthening relationships with CILs, investors, analysts, and bankers. Quite a diverse kind of profile. Prior to this role, Deepesh worked as financial controller for Castrol's global business, and prior to joining BP, Deepesh worked with international consulting organizations for over 7 years. Deepesh is a chartered accountant and was awarded CXO of the Year in January 2020 by Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He is also an alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad and a certified internal auditor from Institute of Internal Auditors, US. Thank you, Deepesh, for coming in.
My pleasure.
And I really look forward, and we all look forward to learning from you today on our use cases and your experience of how you've converted the organization into a digital, I would say, embarking on the journey of digital and digitization. I also have with me Mr. Abhilash Edakadampil, CTO Global PayEx, who comes with 15 plus years of technology plus entrepreneurship experience. Abhilash has been serving as the CTO to PayEx. He served as the CEO of Bison Systems Private Limited, a 30 plus years BFSI service organization that serves leading Indian and global banks. He has also worked with MIT Media Labs in Boston, Deloitte in US, Amtrak in Washington, D.C. He has architected multiple turnkey BFSI products, including financial managing systems that handle over 100 million transactions per day. He holds a bachelor's degree in Mumbai University and master's from Carnegie Mellon University. Welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Abhilash. Thank you for making it. And I know you were traveling and you had to actually make this for us. Thank you
my
very much for
pleasure.
coming.
Thank you.
Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
So, welcome. The panel. The focus is on dealing with three key hypotheses here and the topics. First of all, we all want to understand how large is the B2B space and corporate segment leaders perceive the role and relevance of fintechs into their priorities. So that's the one topic that we really want to deliberate here, because what you see overall in this entire space here is everything got to do with B2C, but what is it from a B2B standpoint, and what are we looking at it from there? And then we also would want to understand, based on that, are B2B fintech players able to have the mind share with industry giants like Castrol or any other global company, and how fintechs are evolving to be able to take that space, mind share, and be able to actually run it with them, their agendas, their priorities, and be able to deliver for their next goals. We would also want to probe a little bit on the alignment at the country level. Very important because of the fact that these are global organizations. How do they bring in priorities from a local standpoint? And the importance of a local fintech player coming in and solving for a problem statement. And at a country level to also ensure that this is a globally accepted kind of a platform and moves with the client into the global markets. So this is going to be a sort of a little appetizer. We're not going to be getting into greater, I would say, tremendous amount of depth. But please feel free to ask questions or anything that you would want to clarify after the session with the panelists, or you can meet them after the session. Let me start with a question with our panelist Deepesh. Which is basically, in view of the fintechs evolved in the last 5 years, basis your interactions with some of the key players of the industry, how do you see a role and this evolution happening?
Firstly, Sanjeev, thanks for having me here. It's my pleasure to be with both of you as well, and fantastic arrangements by the organizers. It's really very impressive. So I think I'm at the right place. On your question about evolution of fintech, well, fintechs have been evolving and so has been Castrol. So I'll try and give you a bit of a perspective in context of Castrol. So Castrol, as many of you may know, is a lubricant product company. And we've been evolving from a product company to product and service company, and then trying to play now from a future-proofing point of view into electric vehicles by supplying EV fluids. So that's been our journey. And I think throughout the last decade or so, our interaction with fintechs has been to help us play into the ecosystem that we operate in. And our ecosystem would include hundreds of distributors, almost more than 50,000 retailers, about 10,000 independent workshops, and more than 500,000 mechanic fraternity. So that's our ecosystem. And what's happened is in the last decades or so, we work with fintech, and there have been solutions that have been offered wherein ordering process happens at a click of a button in a remote area in a country. We call it Castrol Fast Lane. To each sales executive, we have about 1,500 sales executives across the country, and each of them is able to see their ordering, their productivity, lines per dealer into any workshop or any dealer, any part of the country. To a situation where we've done trainings for our mechanic fraternity, which could be either in an online fashion, and helping them develop their skills. So these are some examples of business enablers. Of course, as a finance person, there are many examples I can give in terms of success stories. on payments and collection side as well. But overall, I think we've had a great experience with interaction on the fintech, and they've been able to give us solutions whenever we wanted.
So, Deepesh, a very important and pertinent point here. Considering that you are a global company, you have global systems, you have global technology that you have to adopt, and necessarily kind of casted into that kind of a global framework. When you look at a local problem and you look at a local fintech, and you look at a solution being provided, how well, how difficult and how easy it is to get this entire thing maneuvered, work with the local fintech provider and banks to be able to get your solution out, irrespective of the fact that the global has defined certain standards. How do you do that?
No, great question. And I think one thing that happens very seamlessly in an organization like ours, we're a global organization, we're a part of BP. The journey to digital and a journey to making sure that we are able to give local solutions is an empowerment that we get. We are a listed company. We have a strong board of directors, and therefore we have the empowerment from global. And if I can give you an example of, so we've had an issue where our mechanic fraternity, about as I mentioned earlier, about 500,000 of them, they were finding very difficult to see a line of sight on the digitization in terms of the claims that we give them, in terms of the incentives. So that was a big issue. And we worked with local fintech and in fact with SCB as well to get some solutions to make sure that the customer satisfaction is high and it helps us solve a big problem in that area. So a lot of empowerment from global and helping us work to find solutions. Global tells us that yes, we need to think global, but we need to act local.
Great. And what were the benefits that you derived out of this incentive solution? Can you just elaborate that for us?
Yeah, sure. So, just very high level, the incentive solution is basically making sure that we cut all the paper trail into the entire ecosystem. So, what would happen is if a mechanic wants an incentive, then he would put a claim to distributor. Distributor will send it to the head office. They will review. Sales executives will sign. Then it'll go to payments, right? So the solution that we have worked is a mechanic just registers on something called a Castrol fast scan app, and behind or on the back of each cap of the lubricant bottle, there is a barcode. He scans it, and the money goes straight into his bank account. And I'm talking about more than 100 crores of payments across more than 500,000 people. And the size of this incentive is 20 rupees, 50 rupees, 80 rupees, 100 rupees. It's not like one big 50,000. And what this has done from a CFO point of view is two things. One, it reduces the risk of fraud. It gives me an enhanced control. It gives me insights into the spend that I was hoping goes into the right area and brings out the effectiveness. In that process, what we've been able to also do is make sure that the Government of India initiatives in financial inclusion is also achieved, because then we are helping the mechanic fraternity and truck driver fraternity to acquaint with the seamless banking process and money going into their bank account and uplifting their digital skill set. So huge benefit for them as well as us, actually.
That's really wonderful. In fact, what I can think of is further what this is going to add to is basically sales data origination, where the data which sits, you can actually go back and look at what are the trends in how it sells, go back to your manufacturing plant, order those kind of SKUs dependent on seasonality, dependent on region, dependent on particular market, depending on what sells when. And that data itself, that's the experience that we got, and that's a phase 2 what we're going to work with you guys, is going to be critical for you to bring down your DSO and effectively be able to know very predictive in the month of June, in monsoons, it sells, it doesn't sell, this area is the best, which sells, and which sales guy is selling the best. So that data itself, in my view, which we now have, working with you for last 2.5 years, 3 years together, would be the next step and journey towards taking that to your manufacturing and bringing that kind of DSO and bringing that efficiency back with your manufacturing. In my view, that is where that enrichment will be the phase 2 of what we did,
Yep.
and we'll take that too. Good. Can you share another example of core area of finance where digitization made a significant impact? Any other idea?
Yeah, let me try and give you an example on collections. We are a cash-rich company. We generate significant amount of cash, and at any points of time, we have about 1,500 crores of cash sitting on our balance sheet. And that is possible because of robust working capital management that we do. So a few years ago, with help of a fintech, we worked a system wherein we pull almost 95% of our collections from the distributors on the due date. And I'm talking about collections worth 3,500-4,000 crores. And what this has helped us to do through NACH, which at that point of time was a first mover advantage that we had done to fully utilize it, is just again cut through the collection mechanism into the system. Sales folks spending less time on invoice collections, reconciling, and most importantly, from the distributor point of view, it was very seamless. If the distributor wanted to even delay the payment by 1 or 2 days because there was a liquidity issue, then we could just do it very easily. Otherwise, it was a very long, inefficient process. So I think, this was again, I'm talking about 15, 20 years ago. We were the pioneers when we did this. And not always ERP is fit for purpose. So you got to go beyond and make sure that some of these systems which work for the partners and our extended community then talk to the ERP. So this system of ACH collections connected with our ERP system and helped us enhance working capital delivery.
Excellent. Like I said, from cash to checks to post-dated checks to digital and ACH now. Abhilash, you've been quite, let me bring you in.
Yes.
So where do you see ACH going?
First of all, thank you very much for letting me in. I was just looking at or just hearing what you said. ACH has evolved a lot. ACH is now 24/7 in terms of at least there is no holiday calendar in ACH. I think we are going to look at multiple settlement cycles. I am sure that we'll go towards like a real-time ACH like in US. The beauty about India is that India is going to take a view of whether it increases the mandate limit of UPI or whether it wants to propagate ACH more. ACH does have some fundamental advantage, right? You have the legal protection that you have, right? Section 26. You have the ability to schedule payments, which UPI is also planning to bring in 2.0. So ACH, fundamentally from a batch-based, low-value, high-volume transaction, ACH is going to go much ahead. It's going to be API-based. It's still file-based internally. Many banks have started to talk us through APIs, but internally it's still file batch-based. That's going to go API-based. So I do see a lot of updates happening in ACH. One thing that happened recently was the holiday calendar being abolished for ACH. So you can do ACH collections 365 days. So I see similarly multiple cycles, almost going to a real-time basis.
Very interesting. Imagine you're able to pull the funds, you're able to send the funds 24/7, and India is actually, thanks to RBI, thanks to initiatives of the government, actually becoming real-time, and completely real-time is
True.
the way forward. Excellent. Deepesh, back to you. Would you just want to elaborate a bit further on role of fintech, role of banking, and how these guys are going to work from now onwards from a future of, let's say, banking and fintech together? How do you see that?
Yeah. No, a great question, Sanjeev. And I think generally you would associate fintech with B2C, right? And here's a corporate. And we've done many cases and examples, as I said, around fintechs helping us on the B2B part as well. I think going forward, there are 2 or 3 areas where I see the role of fintech working with corporates like us. Firstly, in terms of lending. Now, just look outside, there is inflation and there is quite a bit of a pressure in terms of the working capital, especially for channel partners, especially for the people who are operating out there, whether it's dealers, it's distributors, it's workshops. And I would look for some kind of a channel finance solution which helps make their life easy, right? And that's very important. So as a corporate, I want to make sure that my partners are able to appreciate and leverage on whatever opportunity exists on lending. And if fintechs can help support that, that's very important. The only thing I would say is we can't just swipe this with one brush. Every customer would be different. So how can we bring that differentiation in terms of the profiling of a big customer, small customer, remote customer, high risk customer, low risk customer? But out there is a huge opportunity. And for corporates like us, I think, we look forward for solutions in that. So that's, I think, the first part. The second part is going to be around the payments. So incentives is one example, but can we take that forward? And I think if fintechs can look at understanding the strategy of every organization, that's very important. I'll give you Castrol's example. We want to move from being a product to product and service and maintenance and then EV. So what does that mean? That means the number of consumer points that we will have in future is going to be multifold. And we will be interacting with them. There'll be more bank accounts than out there. And they will become part of our ecosystem. And we all know about RBI's 2025 innovation growth. So, I'm looking for some innovation and growth in that category where corporates can, utilize. And how can fintechs help deliver our strategy? So this is a bit of a B2C consumer, but on the B2B side, can there be a payment gateway for my small B2B customers, right? So that's another opportunity that I see which can be played in. And third, I think you just touched upon the regulatory part. There is a big change happening in the regulatory environment. The ask of corporates is very high. And we want to be part of being a compliant company. We are listed, we have fixed requirement in terms of achievement of compliance, and we take compliance very seriously as part of our BP Global Group. Now, if there is a regulatory change and the government wants tax base to be widened or having a line of sight on collections, then as corporate, how can I help? And TDS is a classic example. Some new laws have been introduced. GST has gone by. So if fintech can help us do that, then I think that would really support not only solving a problem for corporates like us, but also helping the nation. And these are the things that I think fintechs need to start thinking and work with the corporates to understand where are those pain points. So broadly, Sanjeev, I think 3 areas. I would say lending, payments, regulatory is what sort of keeps me awake at night.
Any of the views that you would like to add on from ERP standpoint?
Oh, yeah. Frankly, ERP today is any ERP you take. This is a practical example. I'm talking as a CFO. It is hard to get the ERP just go to the last mile, right? It's not easy. So how can any solution talk to the ERP? Very important. Now I'm going to add another flavor because in my CFO hat, I sit on the board, I sign certificates. I'm happy for it to talk to the ERP, but I get also worried because it hits my numbers. So it should be foolproof. The controls have to be of very high standard. And therefore, I think it's given any solution that anybody looks at, rather than having an industry of people in my team or corporate team trying to reconcile, here's a great fintech solution, here's your ERP, and there's a team in between. This hybrid digital doesn't work for me, frankly. So it has to be integrated, and it needs to be integrated seamless way with very tight controls. I think we miss out on controls, and then something happens, and then we go back and try to fix it. How can we be more proactive? That's probably the challenge I think I would have.
Absolutely, and that's the reason I asked you this question, because in my view, ERPs won't be able to solve for everything. And while they're trying to go there, but then you always have that one fine end use case, which is where the fintechs come in, and together with ERPs, with fintechs, with banks is the only embedded solution that you can get, which is, in my view, a fully digitized end-to-end kind of a solution that we are looking for, and all the corporates kind of look for. But Deepesh, any other points on multiple ERP solutions that you see it coming? Because a lot of ERPs have now invested time, money into ERPs where they want to have a platform approach and multiple ERPs there. Any views on that?
ONDC, right? So again, great initiative, and very difficult for me to say at this stage. We've not fully evaluated, but that's something that we would like to play in. Multiple. So that's one part, of course, and that time will tell us where this goes. But it's really a disruptor, and we all need to play in it. And I think we all need to play in it in terms of collaborating rather than being competitive, because that's very important. Specifically on multiple ERP, it's a tricky one. That's my personal view, right? It comes at a huge cost, and then you want to make sure that when you do multiple ERPs, be absolutely clear what problem it is trying to solve. Yeah, so I'm undivided. I mean, I'm a bit hesitant on multiple ERP, but that's my personal view.
No, that's absolutely good to have that view. But then thank you very much, Deepesh, and really I really give you that credit of ensuring that this multidimensional thinking and ability to drive the changes in this huge organization on the digital aspect, and India leading the way. It's thanks to you and your leadership team, which has actually been able to do that. And thank you for coming in today, and we'll take this forward.
Sure. Thanks.
Really appreciate that. Thank you very much. In fact, just wanted to bring in a part of the bank, which is where we as a bank have started to also invest with Fintechs for clients. It's not only Castrol, but it's all about solving for the end mile connectivity. And we've built not only our API stacks, also our digital journey, cross-border payments, 100% payments today you can do with Standard Chartered Bank, completely digital. Say it be cross-border on the import side, or let's say miscellaneous remittances. It's all about digital, and that is only possible if you actually have a fintech in between who's actually been able to solve for that missing link that banks have not been able to invest, or maybe probably go there, of connectivity back into the ecosystem. I'll quickly bring you back, Abhilash, and our discussion there. What do you think is B2B fintechs?
B2B fintechs are the neglected stepson kind of, in the fintech world, because people talk about B2C all the time, right? People talk about 500 million customers. We talk about 500 customers. So B2B fintechs primarily provide services to corporates. So essentially you look at payroll, you look at how you get paid, invoices, treasury management, anything that touches with the corporate finance, B2B fintech plays in it. It's non-glamorous. It's behind the scenes. We talk to AR, personnel, clerks, tax documents, tax compliance. The volume we process is almost same as B2C, but obviously it's limited to that ecosystem. It is very complex as compared to a B2C transaction. If you take a B2B transaction, if you want to get an invoice paid, there are about 65 touch points that are there. So that's the kind of complexity that we deal with. That's essentially what B2B does.
And what do you do as a company, Global PayEx?
Well, Global PayEx as a company, we primarily focus in the working capital space of B2B. So that means if you take a company, the oxygen of a company is working capital. You want to get paid more than you spend, essentially, right? So if you take your account receivables, so if you take the order to cash cycle, we try to digitize each and every aspect of it. Generate the invoice and everything downstream, that is presenting the invoice to your buyers, allowing them to pay, reconciling, disputes, reductions, tax reconciliation, provisional as well as later TDS tax reconciliation through 26AS, pushing it to your ERP through a controlled mechanism so that a ledger and subledger recon is done. All that on the AR side. Similarly on the AP side, from the time you can respond to an invoice, get paid, send that payouts, digitizing your disputes back. So if you look into the entire cycle, we automate all these touch points that are there. And today's need, which is embedded financing, which is on the AR side as well as on the AP side. You would like your buyers to get that financing options. You would like to enjoy the financing options while you're making a payment, dynamic discounting. That's what we do. So we focus on the working capital area.
You just mentioned 65 sub-processes.
Yes.
Imagine 65 sub-processes. Are you trying to say that ERPs can't handle that?
ERPs can handle the record keeping of that. So imagine I send you an invoice. You want to dispute an invoice. How will you communicate the dispute? You will not log into my ERP and you will not log into a line item and say, this is my dispute, right? You will send an email. You'll call the sales guy saying that I dispute this invoice. Here is my proof of delivery. He will check against the general ledger. He will check against the POD. He will check against the GRN. Then you will issue a credit note. So all these steps happen outside. It gets recorded in the ERP finally after the decision making is done. But this decision making has many steps. It is non-digitized. It's over emails, WhatsApp, and that's where really the rub is. So that's the complexity. That's the last mile challenges that's out there.
And what do you see the changes that is coming in B2B space in India?
So B2B, I break it down into two aspects. So B2B today, the biggest change is that companies are open towards digitization. So I see a lot of input towards digitization. I see a lot of happening there. But what I see as the biggest change is we are seeing a larger share of modern trade, OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, industries in this place. So that means we have a large corporate, Castrol on one end, and we have another corporate, an OEM like a Suzuki or a Honda on their end, right? And Suzuki or a Honda will send you a remittance advice or a payment advice. And that single document contains deductions, disputes, and you will have to sort of translate it. You'll have to understand what that code 59 of Suzuki means to you, right? So that kind of a business lexicon, translation is what we see increasingly happening. I mean, yes, there are people who are digitizing, paying via app, all those things are happening, but this ecosystem is evolving to build that translation layers.
And what do you see it globally?
Globally, this is the norm. In the sense, remittance advisors and payment advisors are the norm. But globally, in terms of B2B, the biggest factor that we see pushing it forward is embedded financing. Embedded financing is what we see. Majority of our customers are in US. So embedded financing is what we see right there, dead and center. That means the ability to embed finance when I'm sending an invoice to make a payment. So that means I send with options, valid options for him to make a payment early. And embedded financing when I'm about to make a payment. That is on my AP side, and ability to provide dynamic discounting offers, especially for a cash-rich company like Castrol.
And how are banks helping you in this entire journey?
Banks have been our biggest enablers, thanks to you. There was a little bit of trepidation earlier, right? Earlier it was like, do they see us as a threat? How do we evolve together? But what we have seen of late is that banks realize that B2B fintechs are not really the threat. It's another bank with a B2B fintech that is really a threat. So the idea here is that it's an ecosystem play, right? You have your stack. You are the payment rail. You are the compliance stack. We are the last mile stack. We are the innovation stack. So us working together it's an ecosystem play. And banks have been taking us to their customers, ring fencing it, creating value chains with us. Creating those process flows with us. It's been a great journey together.
Why he said that banks like us are helping him is because it's the only industry which is B2B which gets paid as fintech for the job that they do.
That's because you spoil the customers. you don't charge anything for them.
And we guys, as this industry, which is B2B, as a fintech industry, is making a lot of money on the back of the pain that they solve. They are different, maybe boutique organizations solving for it, making money, profitable ventures, and actually imbibing on the fact that they are the future if they have to, or we have to look at solving for digitization end to end. And that real pain point is the key part. If you know the real pain point and you're able to solve for it, that's going to be the key identifier or for fintech to survive. While you'll hear and see many fintechs, great, but the ones which are going to survive is what is the pain that you solve for a customer, what is the pain that you solve for the industry, what is the pain that you solve for the digital aspect of the journey, which is the journey that we have all taken, which is going to be the future. With that, I'll bring this panel to an end, but open to questions. If anybody has any, we can take maybe one or two maximum questions. Is that right? One or two questions? One question. If anybody has any question, happy to take that, or else we are available at SCB stall or in the forum here. Looks it's all clear. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for joining in and really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.